Okay. Thank you, everybody, today for joining today's webinar. Again, my name is Tia Lofsgaard, and I'm the Executive Director at Canada Organic Trade Association. We are excited to be able to celebrate World Soil Day. Of course, as an organic association, this is what we need in order to have our ecosystem functioning properly to provide all these great organic foods that are out there. So we are going to be welcoming today David Nelson. And David, of course, is joining us as the founding member of the Earthrise community within the Planetary Health Alliance. And he serves as invited faculty with both the Nova Center for Planetary Consciousness and Global Flourishing and the Nova Center for Justice and Mental Well-being, which is awesome. David also runs a small regenerative farm, showcasing how healthy soil, sustainable agriculture, and community education are essential to our shared future. And if you could go to the next slide, please, for me, David. I just want to acknowledge that today we're hosting this webinar from Ottawa, which is, of course, on the unceded, unsurrendered territory of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation, whose time reaches back to time immemorial. And just to highlight that, of course, when we are thinking about organic agriculture, we identify so many with the Indigenous land systems that have existed for many, many, many years. And I think today's presentation is going to really show you all the amazing connections proven by science that takes us back to all this Indigenous knowledge that has always been with us. So moving on to the next slide. Of course, just a little bit about us. We are the Canada Organic Trade Association. We're a membership-based association. We're based here in Ottawa doing all sorts of great things to try and promote and protect organic on areas of market access, regulatory affairs, and government relations. We do a lot of organic data and research. And this ties into why we're doing this webinar is consumer education and retailer engagement. I think you'll see through the content of this presentation, he's got such juicy content for us that really spells out the why of organic. And I don't want to take too much time away from his talking, so we'll just go quickly to the next slide. The big reason that we're excited about this as well is that at the political level, we have been doing a lot of work with the Senate Committee of Agriculture and Forestry, and Senator Rob Black is going to be our guest blog creator for this month, celebrating Soil Day. And he has released a very important study that they took a couple years to complete, really doing some investigative work called Critical Ground: Why Soil is Essential to Canada's Economic, Environmental, Human, and Social Health. I'm sure you're all excited to read it. So there's a scan there for you, or you can just go ahead and grab the URL. And just to highlight that we won't be sending out these slides. So if maybe my tech support could actually put the URL in the chat so that if anybody wants to follow that, that would be great. You can move to the next slide. And of course, we like to have fun here and we like to reward you with organic products. So you can enter our World Soil Day contest on Instagram. We run the Choose Canada Organic Instagram handle. So just go ahead and follow the handle. You can apply and you will win all sorts of great organic prizes. And this contest will end tomorrow at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time. So go ahead and put your name down there, just if you'd like to qualify for some great organic goodies. And if you could move to the next slide. And with further ado, I will pass it over to our presenter, David, and welcome you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Tia. It's a pleasure to be here talking about something that I think is vital for us to consider, not just as individuals from an individual health perspective, but a community and national health perspective too. The arguments in Critical Ground, I think, are very important about the economic impact of not participating in soil stewardship. And that's a lot of the stuff I'm going to talk about today. Thank you for this opportunity. This will be about 45 minutes or so, and then we'll have some questions after, I think, if people would like to ask them, I think. And off we go. So, soil, living systems, and the future of human flourishing, and living soil as it intersects with planetary and human health, and what that means. We're going to take a systems approach. Linear thinking is it's reached its a point where we understand that it is not the best explanation for some things. It does work well in some situations, but as complexity rises, it doesn't work well, and we're starting to see the downstream effects of that. Um, so essentially, the main premise of the talk is we have been treating soil like dirt, lifeless dirt, some inert medium that's just some minerals somewhere that, kind of got ground up or something. And, we need to help nature along by spraying some things on it that we've figured out have an impact. It's no life there. And I live in a farming community in southwestern Ontario. I'm surrounded by farms, most of them cash crop, dairy, soy, corn, wheat. And I have a field right across from my house. So I know what this dirt looks like. It does not look like living soil. We have a fundamental misunderstanding of what soil is, and we've missed that complexity of the living system that it represents and is. So the root cause of these cascading crises that we have in planetary health and in human health with these rising comorbid rates of health dysfunction, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, early colorectal cancer now, and late 20 or to early 40s. There's a lot of complex things happening in human health right now, and soil happens to be intersectional with that. So we need to move beyond the reductionist view, and we need to look at this in a new way and recognize soil and what it is participating in is living just as we are living, and we need to be part of that. So, what are the stakes? Nutrient density. Vitamins and minerals have gone actually down, and there's some studies to show that. I'm going to talk about that later. But these things sustain human health and healthy ecosystems, and it goes just beyond the vitamins and minerals. Now we're understanding it's the types of fiber, the types of polyphenols. The density of certain things makes a real difference for the gut microbiome because there's an intersection point there where we are holobionts. We're a consortium of us plus our microbiome together, and it's very influenced by our environment. Clean water. Soil is one of water's primary filtering systems, and we need to protect groundwater in our waterways. It's super, super important to do that. If we let our aquifers get polluted and we mess with our groundwater and our watersheds, like we lose a lot of abilities that I'm going to go into. Stable climate. So we talk a lot about how we're going to capture carbon. Turns out that healthy soil sequesters a very, very large amount of carbon, and it stores it. And I'm going to talk about that too. And then the robust health. I'll make the suggestion that the microbiome inside of us is actually just the soil of the earth that we just carry around with us, and it has a lot of characteristics that are similar. So, human flourishing really depends on this. Soil's the nexus of all of these systems. And from now on, in the planetary health context, we absolutely cannot separate human well-being from the health of the soil. They're intimately linked. So here, I'm going to set the stage here and what we need to do to pivot. The factory farm is a mechanical linear view. Um, Plants are chemical machines. Agriculture is industrial production. We control the whole thing through external inputs, and we maximize single outputs because soil's lifeless, right? Well, a living farm, the earth, soil's a living ecosystem. Plants are partners with the microbes. It's cooperative, not competitive, or collaborative, or bartering is what I'll talk about. Agriculture is ecosystem stewardship. So, using and growing food as a way to enrich the ecosystems around us. Cooperate instead of compete with natural processes and optimize system health overall. Now, here's the reasons for doing that. We'll do four parts here. Here's the presentation roadmap. The living soil. So, what is soil through complexity science? and how is it a dynamic self-organizing system? The crisis of reductionism, what reductionism did to our understanding of how things work. Then I'm going to do a case study in glyphosate to show really what's happening with the science and where it's going and how we need to address this globally because it's, potentially very problematic. And then the path forward, organic systems and realign with natural processes. And that'll go along with some of the indigenous ideas of what we should be doing here. I don't mention them specifically, but their ideology about the land as a living being and plants and trees as living beings, it really resonates with the idea of these complex living systems. So when you look at a living system, complexity science here, they're interconnected components. They work together in a dynamic network, not in isolation. Okay, not. They don't work in isolation. They're self-organizing. The order emerges spontaneously without central authority. No one's telling anybody what to do in the soil, just like there's no boss telling starlings how to fly when they're in a murmuration, right? There's no central authority. They self-organize. They're feedback loops that have cascading effects that amplify or dampen the system change, and then the adaptation of systems. They learn, evolve, and respond, and that all goes through those emergent properties where the whole exhibits more than the sum of the parts. The individual characteristics of the whole are not present in the individual parts. That's a very, very important part of systems thinking and complexity science. So, soil is a living system. It breathes, it digests, it communicates, and it evolves. So, there's a gaseous exchange. There's things where it breaks things down in that reintegration cycle. It communicates. And it evolves over time, just like it evolves in us, with us, and we evolve too. We're not the same that we were 20 years ago. We're a little bit, but we're older, and the microbiome's actually involved in how we age. So what at scale are we talking about here? This is what I want you to take away. What just let this sit with you for a second. 1 teaspoon of healthy soil contains more microorganisms than there are people on the earth. That's incredible. Each gram of soil contains up to 10 billion microorganisms, thousands of species, bacteria, fungi, protozoa, nematodes, and countless others we've yet to classify. It's a universe beneath our feet. So what happened? Well, we said, hey, we can farm like this. It's like a tractor or computer. It's predictable. It's cause and effect. You do this, you get corn. You can isolate the parts of it. You can put certain inputs in, like NPKs, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Um, it can be fully understood. This is what we thought in the reductionist view. It breaks when parts are removed and it's designed externally. But the thing is that farms and agriculture, it actually isn't like that. We've just created something that isn't going to work long term, and it's drawing on the Earth's resources to be resilient and to do a number of different things. A complex ecosystem's nonlinear. Okay, it has emergent behaviors. The parts are only meaningful in context to one another. So if you think the part's broken, you actually have to look at the environment, the relationships that the parts have to one another. Always revealing new patterns. It's spontaneous, dynamic, and it changes and adapts and reorganizes and self-organizes. Pretty amazing when you think about it. So what's doing that? Well, it's the networks and cooperative nature of it, the soil food web. You have mutualism and symbiosis, bacterial, fungi, protozoa. They all perform functions that overlap and are interdependent. It's a web. It's not linear. There's no single point of failure. This is an important point. And that's how we work in communities. We just have to think about this in a more dynamic way. Susan Simard's work, the World Wide Web, where she talked about the Wood Wide Web, where she talked about how ectomycorrhizal networks actually coordinate some of these things and transfer nutrients between trees. It's incredible. And then you have the rhizosphere. So in that rhizosphere, about very few millimeters of the rhizosphere in that thin soil surrounding the plant roots. Um, there's an intricate barter economy there. And plants allocate about 30 to 40% of their carbon exudates and feed that microbial community, but it's a strategic investment. They farm the microbiome, right? So it's all working together. It's cooperative. When you figure out the resolution, you look at this, it's all cooperative. The microbes, they change things, they fix nitrogen, they dissolve things, they produce things like growth hormones, they suppress pathogens for the plant, they work together. And so you can kind of see it there in the bottom where there's the minerals, the nitrogen, the growth hormones, the carbon exudates. It's just a really nice system. And what have we done? We've broken the contract. We've broken that social contract of the soil where synthetic fertilizers bypass this economy. And they starve the microbiome, and you break this ancient soil plant relationship, unfortunately. So let's talk about some of the emergent properties of soil, why it's super duper important, and what it's doing for us beyond just being a place you can stick a plant so it grows. The structure of the soil. This structure is actually really important because these fungal networks form in that layer, and this is why tilling is a problem. Some tilling is going to be necessary, so I'm not 100% no-till, but it's like the amount of tilling you do should be sensitive to the fact that these soil structures are really important. And if you want to maximize soil health, you'll minimize your need to till and only do what's necessary, right? It's what's necessary. Water retention. So I met Janet Jack. She's at the U.S. Department of Energy, and she was doing some work on the microbial production of trehalose. Actually, and I think it's a three carbon sugar in the soil, and how it helps retain water is really interesting. And good quality soil can hold up to 20 times its weight in water. It prevents flooding, it prevents droughts, it moderates temperature, it does a whole bunch of different things. The heat carrying capacity of water in the soil is really important because you moderate the amount of cooling and heating that you get, and then disease suppression. So how did this happen? Like literally, how did this happen? If this is so important, how did this happen? Well, hubris, where we think we know everything, and the limits of our resolution. So we didn't have the scientific tools and traditional methods of looking at the microbes in the soil. We could only culture, less than 1%. And this is the problem in the human gut too. We really can't culture them. So what we couldn't see didn't matter. We didn't, I guess it was a failure of imagination. So what came along? Metagenomics. So we can sequence the DNA directly from the environment, and this reveals astonishing complexity. Soil holds more genetic diversity than anywhere. So it's a really humbling reminder that the absence of evidence is not the evidence of absence, right? And the precautionary principle says we must act with humility, not hubris. We need to change that H word from hubris to humility. Humility when we're doing these things, because this is the foundation of life. Soil is a cooperative ecosystem. And this is one of the things that I'm so passionate about because soil is like a microcosm into our macrocosm. And when soil's doing better, actually, frankly, I think we'll do better as people together. I think the vitality of a civilization is how we utilize the food systems, agriculture, and soil around us to be nature cooperators as opposed to nature extractors, because that's not going to work for much longer. So we need a paradigm shift in agriculture. So how do we get that, right? So just go here, this reductionist view, um, this dirt paradigm, we thought we could just throw stuff on the soil and that would do it, and it persists right now. There's that legacy that does persist because we're we're sciencing our way out of it in a sense with linear inputs. Well, that's not going to work because that linear model is not nature. Nature is cyclical and regenerative. The growth then is decayed, then is reintegrated, then is reuptaken. It's very important because nothing's wasted. Systems regenerate, they're alive. It's kind of beautiful when you think about it. So we've put these linear models on these cyclical systems, and they just really don't work because they accumulate waste, they deplete the resource base, and they create a lot of these natural crises because we're just thinking linearly. A leads to B. Well, that's not the case. There's a lot involved um, in this, and I want to go through four ways that I think that we're disrupting these ecosystems. The first one's tillage. Now, right away, like I said before, I'm not anti-till, but this is just the reality of tillage. It does destroy fungal networks. Okay, so a single pass that's deep can interrupt years of fungal networks. So And if you look this up, they're called gossamer threads. They can't withstand that mechanical shearing. It's actually a problem, and it breaks that soil ecosystem. Soil carbon is oxidized with a lot of tilling. It disrupts the aggregates that are there. So we want stable aggregates in that self-organizing complexity framework to be there. So, and why is that important? Well, it helps to resist erosion and compaction. And there's a problem with the heaviness of farm machinery now. So there's a whole bunch of reasons why that aggregate is important. And then the hard pan, right? So then it creates runoff and things, and it creates a different toxic load. So the analogy, if you go clear cut a forest, we wouldn't expect it to maintain its ecosystem functions. So we can't expect a clear cut fungal network to maintain its ecosystem functions either. So synthetic fertilizers, they definitely are disrupting things. The science is really getting a lot clearer. I have a study that's 6 days old that I'll show you in a little while. It's super super interesting. So what they do, it breaks the contract, like I talked before, I said before, and the immediate effects: reduce root exudate, starts the soil microbiome. They lose their barter relationship. Other populations crash. The soil structure goes down. Plants become dependent on external inputs. And then you have a series of cascading consequences, which we kind of see now: nutrient nutrification, eutrophications, runoffs, and nitric oxide emissions. So there's a treadmill effect, and it continues to degrade biology in a bad way and moves forward in a downward spiral. And I'll talk about that downward spiral in a minute. The big takeaway here: feed the system, not the plant. The fundamental shift in fertility management is feed the system, not the plant. This is regen, composting, all this other stuff, manures, all the stuff we talk about in regenerative agriculture. So we need to build soil capacity. We need to build soil capacity. We need to do this for society too. We need to, feed the system, not the person. But there's a lot of lessons here. So another tool of disruption: monocultures. So it's a fragile to be uniform. There is a lot of protection of biodiversity. So you get a depleted soil microbiome, pest and disease amplification, nutrient depletion patterns, and ecological brittleness. So low diversity systems, they lack resilience. And resilience, we're seeing it in humans now, reflected in the ecosystems we're farming. So also pesticides. So that's another chemical assault. There's insecticide cascades. There's fungicide impacts that are part of these synthetic applications, and the herbicide effects. They all interrupt the ecosystem networks of the soil and the plant. And if I don't say it later on in the presentation, I should say it now. Plants have their own microbiome. It's called the living microbiome, and it's on the plant and it's inside the plant. Okay, so this microbiome thing goes way deeper than we realize. And if you eat locally grown organic fruits and vegetables, you can actually do DNA sequencing and track the plant's microbiome into the human intestinal tract. And up to 2% of that fecal microbial mass is of those consumed living microbes that were on that plant. Okay, so this is a really important thing to talk about because it's all interconnected. So these cocktails, if you mix these all together, like it has a thing that they're designed to kill, not make alive. So you get this downward spiral. You get degraded soil biology, then you get weakened plants, then you get increased chemical inputs to help the weakened plants, and then you get further degradation of the system leading to this thing. And then you have rising input costs, you get people that get locked in, you get stagnant yields, and a complete loss of ancient traditional knowledges on how to do this right, although that's coming back. And I really appreciate actually the people that are looking after this, like the Rodale Institute. One of my colleagues that's invited faculty, she's Nadine Clopton is the Rodale Institute. She's a systems midwife there, so she's pretty awesome. So why the lag? The lag there is because we have this science practice gap. Like I said, we have economic lock-in. So farmers are locked in, they've invested heavily. We need a transition period. We need to prototype the future. And then institutional inertia. So you have a lot of academic and agricultural universities that have these um, technology-based solutions, which tend to be synthetic and external inputs. And they're changing. They recognize that there's a big shift in complexity science now. And so I think they're going to try to create a hybrid, but we really need to look at this in a new way where we take the ecosystem and ecosystem management and building capacity way more seriously. Then we have policy misalignments. You get subsidies for some things, not for others, and crop insurance and all these other things that change the way and what we grow and how we grow it. And then in industry influence, and it's a problem. Like we just have to say it out loud. This is one of them. I'll do a case study in glyphosate. This is a linear input and a harmonic system. So let's look at this together. Soil, harmonic, complex. That's built on an intricate relationship, has feedback loops, and it's evolved over millions of years. Glyphosate is a linear, high impact input designed to kill. Introducing this chemical is like throwing a wrench into the gears of a complex machine. The damage radiates beyond the intended target. That's my point. So we need to ask ourselves, is this chemical safe for intended use? Maybe we should change it to what are the systemic effects of introducing this chemical into a living system? And we need to start thinking about this now with human microbiome biology too. So these studies are well backed up. I'm giving everybody a full reference list to this, so you can go all fact check me and validate anything you want. I have citations for. A lot of glyphosate's being applied. A lot's been applied over the last 10 years. It's increasing, and it's interrupting a very critical pathway called the shikimate pathway. We assumed it was safe for mammals, but the regulatory failure here is that um, we felt that if it didn't affect us, it wasn't affecting anything other than that plant, and that was wrong. So here's what actually happens, okay? The glyphosate interrupts this enzyme called EPSPS, and that enzyme actually is responsible for the microbiome of the soil's ability to make phenylalanine, tyrosine, and tryptophan, which we also use. Our microbiome makes those too. It can produce amino acids. So glyphosate residues in the oral microbiome may be able to interrupt this pathway in us as well. Um, and what this does is it disconnects the ecosystem of the soil where the microbes can't make the raw materials and resources that they need. And there's cascading consequences because when you interrupt this step, then it also interrupts the steps where they produce vitamins, hormones, antioxidants, and chemical defenses. So the problem was the blind spot was that we weren't asking like who's using this pathway. We didn't have the resolution on the microbiome. So the plant's the intended target, and then you have all of these key players that are getting affected too. And the problem with this, it's not whether human cells have the pathway, right? It's whether the living systems we depend upon have it, and they do. And this is the problem. So our internal soil, I'll shift gears a little bit and we'll go to what I think's, the connection to human health here. We're not autonomous individuals, we're holobionts. And holobionts, our microbiome produces vitamins. And like things like B12, it converts K1 to K2, it produces B vitamins. There's some research about Parkinson's and B2 and B7 that just came out that you can give that to people and it'll help them because it's feeding um, the microbiome's not making enough, essentially. It trains the immune systems, responsible for barrier integrity, neurological functions. We now have the first mapped out pathway where the microbiome produces a metabolite called panthenate. It activates a receptor called FFAR, farcenoid free fatty acid receptor 4, and it goes right to the brain. So it looks like now bacteria can communicate directly with the brain. So if you have internal gut dysbiosis, this is a problem. So, and here's some research on glyphosate and the gut microbiome. There's a lot that's come out over the past couple years showing how it does disrupt gut balance and creates dysbiosis. And then it's the cascading effect of the exposome and allostatic load we're all carrying from this. So this just came out 6 days ago. Industrial and agricultural chemicals exhibit antimicrobial activities. Now, this is in vitro. Okay, so it's in vitro, but this is the beginning of what we're going to find out. So here's what they found out. This was published 6 days ago. They screened 1,076 pollutants and they challenged them against 22 prevalent human gut bacteria. Um, 588 inhibitory interactions on 168 chemicals. The fungicides and industrial chemicals showed the largest impact, with 30% exhibiting anti-gut bacterial properties. And this highlights for me the concern that there's a broader toxicity range and impact on the human gut microbiome than we realized. And this is a real problem. Um, there are some limitations to this study, but it just shows you that there is an effector. I think it's actually really important. And here's one of the other things that they found is that at the end of the day, there is off-target antimicrobial activity here. When they screened, they realized there was silent selection pressure, and the gut bacteria, or the bacteria, they try to evolve resistance via efflux pumps, and this might create antimicrobial resistance, and it's a big deal. So the big takeaway here from the bottom right-hand corner in yellow is underscores the need to consider off-target effects on non-target organisms. Very important. That's complexity science and ecosystem, right? That's what we're looking at here. It's non-linear. So downstream effects of shikimate disruption. Um, Gut-brain axis connection problems in humans, disrupted depression, anxiety, sleep disturbances, mood dysregulation, impairment, inflammatory cascades, oxidative stress, lipopolysaccharide translocation, which greatly increases inflammatory stress. And this is a big thing with a lot of dementia and cognitive comorbid outcomes as this LPS infiltrates in autoimmunity. So beyond the gut, glyphosate's other mechanisms of harm, it's oxidative stress, mitochondrial dysfunction, endocrine disruption, and liver disease. And I don't have it in the deck because I just read it yesterday. But now there is now a liver, or there is an there's a liver, sorry, an eye gut liver axis. And the study showed that when you get an antimicrobial on the surface of your eye, so airborne pollutants, pesticides, whatever, and it travels into your tear duct, it can actually affect your liver's function. Okay, so everything in the exposome is playing a role here. And we're just getting fidelity on the toxic environment. Here's another one: proximity to golf courses and risk of Parkinson's. Draw a circle around it 1 to 3 miles, and the risk of Parkinson's decreased with distance. Increase the closer you got. So it suggests pesticides or herbicides or whatever they're applying to the golf courses may play a role in the incidence of Parkinson's. Environmental exposure, that field dust, so wind erosion transport. You can have bad farming practices in one place and then go to somewhere else. Um, Cumulative exposure, like I said, when they're spraying the field and they're tilling across from my house, that we go inside the house, I close the doors, we close the windows, and I have a HEPA filter because I just don't want it in the house. Like, I just invested in that. So, and particle size, it matters. This particulates are like they're really able to pass things they shouldn't. So, and this is unregulated and unmonitored, so we need to look at that. And here's another one, May 8th, 2025, respiratory exposure to agricultural dust extract, which was hog dust extract, by the way, alters gut commensals and key metabolites in mice. So with this track to humans, I'm not sure. But this is kind of mapping out how it might. Agricultural farms spraying and particulate airborne stuff, and this affects the aerobiome, the microbiome of the air. That's a new area of research. I would like to look into that. So airborne drift and particulates, they travel over, we breathe it in. There's groundwater contamination of multiple layers. It leaches into the soil, and then we have this health risk of human health now, brain issues and other things. And remember, Parkinson's actually begins in the gut before it even goes anywhere else. So glyphosate has an antibiotic action in the soil. This is another thing that we're finding out, right? There's selective pressure, nutrient cycling impairment. The pesticides accumulate and it disrupts fungal networks. Again, so if you're tilling and you're spraying, you have this communication system, these ectomycorrhizal communication networks that are being totally dismantled. So nobody knows what anybody's doing in the soil, right? So we've taken away their ability to be symbiotic. So a precautionary point: when uncertainty meets complexity, prudence demands caution here. So what we have to do, here's what we have to do. This is the precautionary principle. If glyphosate disrupts the shikimate pathway in organisms that possess it, and soil and microbes have this pathway and depend on it for some things, and the microbiome health of the soil and us determines these ecosystems in human health, and epidemiological evidence shows concerning disease patterns, and multiple mechanisms of potential harm exist now, so it's cross-intersectional. We need to be cautious now about we need to really get serious about what it is that we're looking at, and I suggest you support the Canadian the CODA's Organic Action Plan, the new one. So I'll just put a plug in it for that, but it's really important that we get this right. What we don't know is the full extent, the long-term population effects, the cumulative effects, the vulnerable populations, and the one that's got me right here in the heart, because I have two kids, multi-generational and epigenetic consequences. We need to be cautious now. And we need to really look at this because the continuum of life is being affected. The soil's microbiome has a partnership with the plants, and those plants have a relationship with us, right? So when you eat a piece of broccoli, for example, which is grown organically, it had a great relationship from where it came from, and it has a great relationship with you, and it donates all those sulforaphanes and sulfur-containing compounds to us to enhance our health. You see, it's this beautiful partnership. But when you disconnect these ecosystems, you disconnect our ability to flourish and be healthy. And flourishing is really important. It's just health is not the absence of disease. Health is the expression of the capacity to exhibit exuberance and vitality. We do have a nutrient collapse in food. I'll have some references there for you in the sheet that I give you, but the more stuff we spray, we have consistent declines over time, significant drops in minerals and vitamins. Um, the problem is the soil, the health, too much CO2, climate change, too much heat. Um, Agricultural practices are really changing it, removing plants' ability to be resilient to the environment, which is why they produce all these things that benefit us. So I'm a little concerned about this, to be honest. You know, we're told we can have an adequate diet, but I wonder if the food we're being fed is adequate. So soil and human health, environmental microbiome depletion, gut dysbiosis, systemic inflammation, we don't feel great, and that's a problem. So that's the connection. This connection flows to us. The microbiome of us is connected to the microbiome of the soil we should be seeing as a living ecosystem. But right now, we're just exposed to the dirt and agricultural dust of how we do commercial farming, and it needs to change. I understand we have to feed the world. I'm a practicalist, but we need to start talking about these openly as friends. So one of the things that's really important to note here, just look up at the top, the old friends hypothesis. That's Graham Rook's work from 2013. And really important. They've been around for a long time, and we've sanitized and killed the microbiome environment all over the place, and we need to do something about that. Soil's a carbon sink. So, you can look at the data there, but 50 to 70% of original soil carbon's been lost. Um, and we have a lot of emissions from synthetic fertilizers, livestock, and things that are interrupting these carbon sources. And the thing is that if we had healthy soil, stable soil is a massive carbon sink. So bringing back like wetlands and a lot of these special places, bogs and peat and stuff, this is really important for the ecosystems all around us. Um, so we need to talk about that. We need to talk about water systems, storage, 20 times its weight in water, the sponge effect, reducing flooding. We've seen last couple of years, how much flooding have we seen, right? The climate's changed. Things are changing. Aquifers are going dry, stream flows, and then local regional climates. That's continental versus water moderation, right? So water resists change in temperature. It's important. And then that filtration piece, really important. It's a whole ecosystem about how these things work together and what the interruptions are about all the pesticides and contaminants and eutrophication of these zones. It's not good. So here's another one. I break it up a little differently about the sponge and the degraded soil. So a healthy soil, it's a sponge and a filter, and degraded soil, it's a shredder and a contaminator, and it's not good. So the biodiversity crisis. Here's the other one. There is a soil organism decline. Now, there's a new study out in the past 6 months. I can't remember which month it was published, and I don't have it in this deck, where the researchers figured that 99.9% of all the biodiversity was in the soil, and only 0.1% was represented by macro flora and fauna. It's mind-blowing. So if there's a decline in the soil's microbiome, the microbiome of the soil, I'm concerned. Then we have an insect apocalypse. The insects are dying. The birds are dying. 3 billion birds since 1970, and the pollinator crisis, right? Like we have to do something. When you look at it, the we're going to lose the resiliency of these ecosystems, and I'm concerned about that. The cost of inaction is massive, trillions of dollars, healthcare costs, and annual soil degradation. And then, these figures just they capture the money, but they don't capture the real scope and value, right? How do we value species extinctions? What are the laws of ancestral seeds? The displacement of farming communities, the degradation of cultural foodways and waterways, the accumulation of these persistent pollutants in every ecosystem on Earth. The question is not whether we can afford to change, it's whether we can afford not to. Every year of delay compounds the damage, increases the ultimate cost of restoration, which is what we're going to have to do. So, what do we have to do? We need to pivot. We need to move away from control and move away towards cooperation. Cultivate diversity and polycultures in society too. Integrate beneficial organisms, enhance natural processes, and optimize health. Create resilience, right? Feed it with good inputs. And this requires humility. We must do this with humility, acknowledging that all the years that we've had evolution to produce these systems are way more sophisticated than anything that we can engineer. I think that our role isn't to dominate them, right? Which has been the paradigm of the last 400 years, the reductionistic paradigm. We need to collaborate and become skilled participants in these ecological processes and systems instead of overriding them. So the principles of IFOAM, I think, apply here. Um, and they map directly onto systems ecology. Health, soil, organic, it's the foundation of health. And health emerges from these functional ecosystems, not from chemical interventions. The ecology is important. Agriculture should function as part of the ecosystem. And we can do it. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but we can turn our attention in this direction. Fairness. We need to build relationships that ensure that we're fair with the environment and with people. Living systems thrive on mutualism, and we can see a lot of non-mutualism in today's world. That's not going to go well for us. The mutualism is important, and we need to care for each other and care for these things, acknowledge uncertainty, but recognize that we need to invest heavily in how we make choices and decisions about this stuff because the generations that come after us really matter. So if we redefined agriculture to cultivate life, we'd be stewardships of the biosphere. And this is part of the indigenous thing. We're just all mutual beings of which, you don't own the river. You're there to kind of be part of the process of what it's doing. A long-term relationship should be a common understanding and intergenerational, where every human on earth understands that we're in a long-term, we are nature, and thinking otherwise doesn't work. And then the success we measure, by our health. Do we have exuberant vitality or not? Are we fighting or not? Can we exercise love and compassion or not? Like all of these things are related. I do work in justice, and I can tell you that mental health is tightly tied to biological processes. And we have work showing that impulsivity and aggression is related to the gut microbiome and, for example, the brain's ability to process glucose. All of these things are related. So we need to be partners. So what do? Big picture, minimize disturbance. It's not zero till and make that your standpoint. If that's what you need to do, okay, but we need to minimize disturbance. Necessity here. We need to minimize disturbances. We need to maximize biodiversity if we can. And how do we do that? Lots of players, lots of food, lots of inputs, and good things happen. When my friend Jules Gorman always says, when good people come together, good things happen. And I think about that in soil and different things too. We can't predict the outcome. We just know it's going to be better. We need to keep it covered, keep soil covered. That's one of the things, mulches, and that all helps protect things. I don't rake my leaves anymore. And it's like I say, it's magic, but the leaves are gone in the summer. Like they're gone. I don't touch them, they're gone. And I think of the polyphenols, the carotenoids, the maples that I have, and how it's nourishing the soil now. I think about it totally differently. And I want to feed the system, not the plants. So feeding plants directly, that conventional approach where we apply fertilizers and bypass these microbial partnerships that create dependency on inputs, it's not going to work, folks. It degrades the biology in that ecosystem of the soil, and then we need increasing application rates, more technology, more solutions, more. It's not going to work. Nature is way smarter than we are. The collective intelligence of nature is way smarter than we are. So we need to build capacity and learn from nature. Compost, manures, cover crops, microbes release these nutrients gradually. It's not like a sledgehammer. And you get this self-sustaining fertility. And remember, fertility rates around the world are going down. I'll just throw that out there because there's a connection to all of this in planetary health. So here's the virtuous cycle. Instead of the disruptors, we have healthy soil biology, enhanced nutrient cycling, right? Improved plant health due to that enhanced nutrient cycling and the creation of lots of important metabolites and players and biodiversity. Better carbon sequestration in the soil, super important. And we get a great resistant ecosystem around us in nature. So these improvements, I just want to reinforce that they help one another, they stack, they complement and amplify one another. And the more we do all of them, the more the things are going to be. And that becomes a self-reinforcing, strong, resilient, protected ecosystem, which is exactly the opposite of what conventional systems do that require these increasing inputs. So the evidence for organic systems, after decades of research, six things emerge. Soil biodiversity is really important. Carbon sequestration is really important. Water filtration is really important. And infiltration, so where that water is getting to. The nutrient density of the things that are grown on the land and our relationship to them. The beneficial insects that have a cross-sectional relationship with plants and food systems the world round. And then the resistance to drought is really important. And the Rodale Institute, after a 40-year study, found that organic farms, and I think they published this in 2021, if I'm not mistaken, use 47 after the transition period. They use 45% less energy and have higher profits. And they perform the same as or better in a lot of different metrics. And really, we need to ask ourselves, what's the cost of not doing this now? We're starting to see that. Like, what does it cost if people get Parkinson's because they have exposure? Not everyone's going to get it, but if a lot of people get exposed to this and we start getting this, the cost of the care versus the life and health span now is concerning, right? There's a whole bunch of intersections here. So the economic case for all of us, there is growing market demand here. Okay, so I have a store, I have a regenerative farm, and we sell our stuff in the store, and people are absolutely willing to continue to support us. Um, there's definitely a premium. It's just higher cost and time for us. But there is a higher premium there. Long-term resilience of that and risk mitigation. I mean, those are four things that I can absolutely get behind. And that allows us to build this so commerce and capitalism, I don't like capitalism, but commerce, the way we do business can actually be triple bottom line. We can do something great for the consumer. We can have a profitable business because we need to fund our actions, and we can reinvest in the ecosystems of Earth. We can do this. I'm doing it on a small scale. Like, I know we can't do it huge yet, but we have to prototype, as Volkert Engelsman said when I was at the Ottawa CODA summit. Said we need to prototype the future. I agree with him 100%. Some of us need to stand up and prototype the future. So the big summary here is soil is a complex living system. It's not inert. It's dynamic, self-organizing, and way more biodiverse than we ever thought. It performs functions that cannot be replicated synthetically. Just think about that. Let that seep into your soil, into your soul, and into your soil. It can't be replicated synthetically. Reductionist approaches are going to disrupt the living system. So big tillage, synthetic fertilizers, monoculturing, pesticides, they're going to herbicides, fungicides, rodenticides, sides are going to be a problem. And side means death, I think, if I remember correctly, CDA. So disruption cascades through scales. The problem is when you start interrupting soil microbiome and then the human microbiome, and we have all these chronic disease patterns, they ripple through society, and then there's unintended effects. And the unintended effects are, essentially can scale to mental health issues. And there's a lot of relationships now between food systems and mental health, ultra processed food. And a lot of these things are based on ultra processed food production. And those are things that we really need to take into consideration now moving forward. Like our kids, man, our kids, our kids, our kids, the generations to come. This is real. And organic systems offer the solution. They really do. They're looking back to the wonder of the complexity of nature, cooperation networks, cooperation ecology, cooperation evolution, cooperative evolution, collaborative evolution. This is really starting to take hold in science. We need to look at this. It's not just one species competing, like it's a whole bunch of things working together in concert that influences one another's fitness to survive. So we've been treating soil like dirt. Let's revisit the metaphor. We've been extractive, reductionistic, and self-defeating. Let's switch that up to honoring soil as life and honoring life as soil, regenerate, whole, and sustainably abundant. The future of human flourishing, agriculture is a healing force for people and planet and the world. It's a practical reality, and it's a worthwhile transition that prioritizes life if we have the collective will. Let me say that again. It's a practical reality and a worthwhile transition if we prioritize life with a collective will. It's very important that we do that because human flourishing depends on ecological flourishing. And ecological flourishing begins in the soil, and this fundamental insight should guide us into the future. So I want to do a call to action, and I want to say, is there anybody out there that's listening that is in any of one of these four positions to advance this sustainability and agriculture piece through what we're doing, our internal desires to leave the world better than we found it and help to fix some of the things that seem to be broken? We need to advance the science. Okay, so if you're in academics, advance the science, support research, document outcomes, and train next generation farmers in ecological literacy. We have a new scholar at the Nova Institute. Her name's Hannah Gosnell, and she does a lot of work in conscious food systems. She's amazing. And so she's a good example, who's somebody who's advancing the science. We need to drive policy reform. I went to Ottawa and I lobbied with the Canada Organic Trade Association. It was super fun. I was very honored to be there because we need to advocate for these changes to the government decision makers. We can't take our foot off the gas. And really, they're a consumer and a customer, right? And they need to be educated too. They don't know what about the food they're eating. They just got elected. They're in politics. I mean, some people might have a real interest in it, but we need to make visible the true cost of these cheap foods and the value of these organic systems. The real cost of the food might not be $2.50 a kilo. It could be $7.50 a kilo if you take in the health consequences and the soil degradation and the CO2 atmospheric issues. And then we need to build the markets, deep infrastructure and supply chains that value these type of systems. Our leadership is really important for the human flourishing. So I want to say thank you. I really appreciate the platform to put all these things together. And if you want to reach out to me, my email address is there, and you can find me on LinkedIn there as well. I would be happy to take any questions, and I want to actually just thank you for your attention, actually, and for listening and for letting it seep into your soul and into your soil. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, David.